a derivative of the diversity, equity, inclusion package is cultural competency. They've developed a lot in these teaching schools. They've developed a lot of tools for teachers to adapt material to different quote unquote cultures. I don't know if you can adapt it to a race. Did you find anything useful in that, in translating things or identifying cultures? Like, to what degree is the DEI stuff salvageable and not toxic and useful and actually boosts the education experience for everybody involved? What are some of the things that you think are worth preserving?
Oh, I think, there's nothing wrong with talking about how math is a global achievement, really. I mean, and there are, the Chinese calculated pi to the number of digits based on making like 1,000 side polygon or something, and talking and really showing that this is not a white male Western achievement. I mean, that's okay because it's totally real. And I have no problem with working in the history of mathematics in a way that relates to that and is representational to that extent, and that's all good. Where it fits. I mean, can't really, it doesn't work if it's not true, or you're trying to shoehorn something in that is not relevant. It has to fit with the material. Like I wouldn't turn a math class into an exploration of ethnic discoveries. It would be like, okay, let's connect this unit that we're doing now to something that was discovered that led to that, it has to serve the math, not the other way around. We redid our department guidelines in a self-study to include a commitment to do that kind of thing. I didn't do much of it, frankly, and I kind of wanted to. I mean, I kind of would like to. And in general, that CRT-informed DEI and anti-racism didn't really touch my teaching, my math teaching. It wasn't about what was happening to my curriculum or my courses. It was more about watching how the school's programming was affecting the kids in other courses and other classes.
Such as what?
Such as, we would have special seminars, workshops devoted to anti-racism or DEI, and also meetings devoted to it, week-long sessions. I was, hearing about how it was impacting kids in their history and English classes. 1619 project being taught exclusively, without any criticism of it, being something that they, felt they could express. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I'm just going by reports, so I wasn't in those classes. But, looking at how it was being pushed and how kids were being induced to identify, and it was really an ontological. I had a problem with what was happening to the kids at an ontological level. Like, what is meant to be in the world? Who are you? I am white, right? And getting the kids to see themselves how other people see them, and prioritizing that identity over their essential, what I feel is important for identity development, which is to be yourself and who you are as a person of conscience in the world. And that being what is the most important thing about being a human being.
A person of conscience.
Yeah, and speaking to being able to transcend all these social categories, which are operative in the world. They do inform bias and racism and how people see you, but you are not how people see you. And I think teaching children to identify with how other people see you is a seduction, like in the etymological sense of the word seduction.
Which is?
So seduce, the root of that word is duce, like from the Italian, right? Like il duce Mussolini, right? So it means to lead. Okay. So seduce means to lead away, or to take away, or
Cause to
lead
stray.
off, to stray, right? So as opposed to education, the root verb of education is
Educe.
educe, right? So educe is to lead out, to draw forth, to bring out the child, and to show and to have him express his or her true self, and to joy in that discovery, right? To follow the path of curiosity and interest, and to reveal that revelation of the self. That's how I see education. Not an installing or delivery of programming, but a drawing forth of, it's sort of the old dictum, know thyself. Well, how do you know yourself? You have a teacher that helps you to know yourself. You perform it's an art. Teaching is an art that draws a child forth, not to lead to some particular sense of themselves, which is prepackaged and labeled for them to adopt, but to okay, who are you? You tell me who you are, right? Or you find out for yourself, and you don't even have to tell me who you are. So seduction and eduction are these two things, and one leads to an inauthentic place, and one is an authentic place. Leads to an authentic place, and I was seeing children being led into an inauthentic place with these being told to identify with group identities based on how other people saw them, and being told that was actually their authentic identity, and that this was a journey of discovery, that they were being revealed to them that this is who you are, right? And this is who you are in the world, because the world sees you this way, and therefore that's you have to acknowledge it. You have to identify with it as a means to, function and navigate in the world. And I think that's wrong.
It's not just inauthentic, it's impersonal. It's like the way in which an institution would look at people as just these categories to be shuffled around. It's a very, I use the word satanic in a very specific form, but it's very materialistic. It's very the lowest level of a human being, and reducing or causing that lowest level to be the highest level, which I guess it is according to an institution, or according to certain ways of viewing the world. Once you prioritize those lowest denominators of the self, you can actually see what happens to society when that starts to happen. And I don't think it is joyous. I haven't seen it be joyous. It's joyous for the victor in that moment, but it never lasts.
But there's a performance of joy, like the joy. Well, okay, just to back up, I agree with you. Yeah. I think that what's happening is that these group categories, which seem so, the lowest level of identification and crude but banal and all these things, they're infused with a political meaning, which is from, Crenshaw, and from a person who happens to be black to I am black, right? So and there's a whole history of revolution and meaning and transcendence of opposition to who you are that's tied up with that. So it's infused with this wonderful, rich history of rebellion and triumph and the great lead, and so that's where I think that's the meaning that's being used to lead people into it, because you get to participate in the grand narrative of history, and who would shy away from that meaning? And so, investing and drawing kids into that project, that historicist project, is very seductive.
Rather Hegelian.
Yeah, well, these are activist teachers and scholars that see history as an unfolding through conflict of, their job is to sort of manifest the apotheosis of our deliverance, right? And that means pushing certain voices to the fore, and those voices are the voices of history. Of course, they have to say the right things. They have to be categorically derived voices. Like, you have to have a black voice that's politically black. You can't have a black voice that has white supremacy, right? Exactly, attached to it. Or internalized white supremacy. So to be white in a responsible way means to recognize that your denial of whiteness is inauthentic, and that to be authentic according to them is to accept your whiteness. If I denied my whiteness and said, well, actually I'm Italian, English, and French, well, that would be inauthentic to them. So there's a mirror image of seduction happening with white people, but it's all seduction.
You said earlier that you had that script running in your head, and I know that too because I was at Evergreen and I adopted it. And what caused you to disidentify with it, or what caused you personally to let it run its course, or not allow it to be the front and center? Why is it no longer the front and center? Was it ever the front and center? What made it compatible for you if it ever was, and what made it incompatible with you if it isn't?
I started to have real doubts about it. I mean, in starting maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started to see the influence it was having on children and their development, and watching kids come in ninth grade and becoming more resentful, and, you know, with the very things that were supposed to empower them having the opposite effect and making them suspicious and resentful. And, you know, adopting an identity that was superficially empowering, but actually not seeing it pay off for them. Both, you know, minorities and underserved populations, or, you know, under-resourced, and white people, black people. To the extent that kids adopted that ideology, they were hurt by it. And the kids that didn't adopt it had better success outcomes. So, you know, of course, this is not scientific research. This is just qualitatively watching what's going on. Yeah. And seeing it happen and thinking there's something not working here. And then I started, you know, watching some intellectuals, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, I know. I went, you know, getting the red pill. But, you know, and fitting the pieces together, reading things that were not on the list.